Who owns the merchandise? All right, this brief overview will be dealing with shipping terminology. The textbook talks about FOB, which stands for free on board, and there are two categories of free on board. One is FOB destination, and the other is FOB shipping point. These terms will be used on purchase and sale agreements of merchandise, and it's really to determine who's responsible for the merchandise, who owns it while it's in transit, who has to pay for shipping, and who has to pay for insurance costs. FOB shipping point is when the ownership or the title passes for the merchandise when it is loaded on the common carrier. So this means that the buyer is responsible for paying the costs of the delivery and for insuring the merchandise. So in terms of an end-of-the-year inventory count, the accountants have to worry about merchandise that was purchased by a client that has shipping terms of FOB shipping point, because even though the merchandise may not arrive, let's say by December 31st to the place of business, once they've been placed on the UPS truck or the FedEx truck or put in the mail, the goods are technically the buyer's merchandise and should be included as part of their year-end inventory. More importantly, sometimes shipments get lost or damaged or destroyed while they're in transit. The buyer is responsible for paying for the insurance to cover the risk of loss. Sometimes the seller will pay for the shipping as a convenience to the buyer, and then that amount is added to the account receivable. You'll see some of those transactions in the merchandising chapter. Please note that sales discounts or purchase discounts are not allowed or given for shipping costs. The seller's just doing this as a matter of convenience. As the stuff gets loaded on the UPS truck, the seller might pay, but then they're going to send an invoice to the buyer because the buyer is responsible for the cost of the delivery. And the cost of the delivery is not recorded as transportation in expense or freight in expense. It is actually a cost of the inventory. So those shipping costs ends up being a debit to merchandise. When we're talking about FOB destination, we have the flip side. The seller owns the goods until the merchandise reaches its destination, which is the buyer's place of business. So the seller pays for the transportation costs. Those costs are then usually called transportation out or freight out or delivery expense, and they're an expense to the seller.